David Weiss runs the YouTube channel DITRH, and he often appears on other people's YouTube channels and podcasts in the form of interviews talking about his belief in flat Earth. He has a little script that he uses and a PowerPoint, and he makes his way through what he thinks is all the evidence he has for flat Earth. Now, David has asked to debate me before, but as you all know, I don't debate established facts. But if I was to debate him, this is how I'd do it. Hello all and welcome along to another episode of Flat Earth Friday with me, Simon Dan. Thank you very much for joining me. Before we begin today, a quick word from me about today's sponsors, Planet Wild. At the UN Biodiversity Conference in Montreal in December, measures were agreed upon to end man-made biodiversity loss and species extinction by the year 2050. The resolutions include putting 30% of Earth under protection and restoring 30% of damaged ecosystems. Sounds great, right? Yes, well, someone actually has to do it by doing things such as actively bringing back endangered species, getting rid of plastics in the oceans, and reforesting degraded land around the world. That is exactly what a new initiative called Planet Wild, going live this spring, is doing. Planet Wild is a community of people who want to give back to nature. Members' monthly contributions are used to implement conservation missions around the world that effectively stabilise ecosystems and protect wildlife. Their monthly missions are documented in exciting videos from the ground and show the community what their contributions are used for. Now, if you want to learn more and become part of this community, sign up for free via the link in the description for the waiting list and get a first glimpse of what they're up to. I've already had a look, I will be joining, and I can tell you it's well worth it. Right, back to today's video, which, as I said earlier, is about how I would go about debating David Weiss on flat Earth. Now, I've chosen a random appearance from David, in particular his appearance on the Strange Planet podcast. Now, I'm going to explain how I would argue each point, and I think without doubt this is going to be a multiple video series. So grab yourselves a tea or a coffee and sit down and watch me review an absolute train wreck of a presentation. Away we go.
Right. I guess what I was getting at was, do you believe is not the right word. Yeah. What is your hypothesis, your theory about other planets? Are they spheres or would they also be flat?
Yeah, so this is, our consumer optics have outgrown the lies of heliocentrism. And when we zoom in on a planet or a star, these stars are trillions and trillions and quadrillions of miles away, but we can zoom in and make them bigger. When I'm here in Connecticut, I zoom in New York City. I can only go so far. I can't zoom into a window, but I can zoom into a star and make it big. This is Mars I'm showing here. Okay, Mars is within the Earth system. In the flat Earth model, it is a light. All of the planets used to be called wandering stars. They're all named after gods. Don't ask me what they are, but it's very interesting, right? So when we look at it, the pictures we see of Mars coming from two sources, NASA and Disney, and I'm not sure which one's more realistic at this point. So
now I would start here by saying that David is showing a video of nothing more than an out of focus picture of the planet Mars. And that's because the P900 and the P1000 are not designed for astrophotography in this manner. I would then reference real photos of Mars taken by NASA and amateur astronomers. I would show this picture from Reddit, taken by an amateur astronomer from their back garden in 2021. I would ask David if he could prove that this member of the public has fabricated this image, and if so, for what purpose? Then I would reference the Hubble photo of Mars and point out the features on the surface that are the same from both the Hubble and amateur photos. And lastly, I would mention the retrograde motion of Mars and its concrete proof that we orbit the Sun. I would then ask David for a flat Earth explanation regarding the fact that Mars moves one way in the sky before turning back and moving the opposite direction for a couple of months and then flipping back onto its original path. Now, I would explain that the reason for this is due to Earth's orbit being inside Mars's and that we are moving faster than it in our orbit. As we catch up with Mars and overtake it, it appears to move in different directions against the backdrop of stars.
When we look at stars, since we're looking at that, let me pull up some stars. Stars are really amazing. And Nikon, we have to shout out to Nikon. Nikon a few years ago came out with the P900, and then after that, the P1000 super zoom camera. we can zoom in on things and bring them into great clarity.
Out of focus clarity.
So here is, I'm showing the star Sirius. Oh, let me get rid of that. Nebula. Okay. This is the star Sirius. This is what Sirius looks like. Okay. It's a pulsing orb of energy. And what is it doing here? I don't know. I used to laugh at astrology and, say astronomy is the real science, but...
Okay, well, first off, again, I would say that this is out of focus. I would then ask David if he's tried to look at these planets and stars with a camera through a telescope rather than with just the P900 or P1000. I'm going to assume that he hasn't. Then again, I would show this amateur footage of Sirius, which is actually a double star system. The bright star is Sirius A, and the really dim one just to the top left is Sirius B.
When you look at astronomy, there's really just speculation. Michio Kaku says it himself that, cosmology is off by 10 to the 200th power. That's 10 with 200 zeros, okay?
Actually, he said 10 to the 120, not 10 to the 200. But that's by the by, because cosmology is not astronomy. I would ask Dave if cosmology is astronomy. He would say no, and I would say, there you go then.
That's because they're just basing conclusions on speculation and unproven theories, right? So when we look at all these different stars, it's crazy what we see. And then what you see, basically that tells you it's not a star. Let's talk about the distance to the closest star. The closest star, excluding our sun, people say, well, what about the sun? 93 million miles away. The closest star is 4.5 light years, and that's about 25 trillion miles. Richard, people just go, 25 trillion miles. That's not that far, right? If you were traveling at a mile per second, right? This isn't hard. A mile per second for 1 trillion seconds, you've gone 1 trillion miles, right? Mile per second, 1 trillion seconds, you've gone 1 trillion miles. Do you know how long 1 trillion seconds is? Want to take a guess?
Millions and millions and millions of years.
No, it's 31,000 years. 1 trillion
31,
seconds.
okay.
1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years, right? So if you're traveling at a mile per second for 31,000 years, you're only 1/24th of the way, 1/25th of the way to the closest star, right?
Now, I would say to Dave here, so what? What is your point? Space is big, very big. We know the distance to that star. I would then run through how we use trigonometric parallax to find the distance to Proxima Centauri. But the point remains, Dave can't believe that these distances are real, so he just hand-wave dismisses them.
And then you say, well, how could I see that star, right? Because light expands outwards, and as it expands, it's spreading out. It's not getting brighter, it's getting dimmer. Every time you double the distance to a light, it's half of the brightness, right? So we can, I'm not going to do the math here on the show, but in many of my interviews, I lay it out for you. We could not see a star at a light day away. I don't care what size it is, or a light week away, or a light month away. We can really just exaggerate, right? The sun is 8 light minutes away. If the sun was a mile over your head, it would fill the entire sky, horizon to horizon. We move it 93 million miles away, or 8 light minutes away. It's the size of a dime held at arm's length. If we doubled that distance, it's a quarter of that size of a dime. And if we doubled that again, now 4 times as far, it's tiny. And if we double that again, 8 times as far, it's small as it's a star at that point, and that's a light hour. Okay.
Now at this point, I would ask Dave if he knows of a star called Betelgeuse. Now Betelgeuse is about 750 times bigger than our sun. It's so big actually that we've actually taken a photo of it. But not only is it big, it's luminous. Around 10,000 times more luminous than our sun on average. So despite the inverse square law, which Dave is referencing here, the light from Betelgeuse travels those 642 light years to us here on Earth. Now, it's a fraction of the light that Betelgeuse actually produces, but that's why it looks like a tiny pinprick of light. It's because they're so far away. And of course, I would ask Dave if he was aware there's some stars that we can only see with telescopes and some stars that we can't see at all. And that's maybe because they're too far away or they're not luminous enough to begin with.
If we made it 24 times farther, that's a light day. You could not see it. The angular resolution limits of our eyes scientifically tell us that we could not see the sun at a light day away. Okay, well, the sun's not a light day away. What can we compare this to?
Well, I'll probably butt in here and ask David if he knew the angular resolution limit of our eyes. And he'd probably say, I don't know. So but I would inform him that it's about 0.02 degrees, or in astronomy terms, about 1 arc minute. But of course that matters not, because you don't need an angular resolution limit to see light. The light from that star has travelled very far to hit our retinas. Now we can't see a disk because of that angular resolution limit, but we can see the light that that star produces.
Right? They tell us Polaris, our North Star, which is very bright in the sky, everyone can see it all the time in the north with our naked eye.
Now at this point I'll step in and question Dave's description of Polaris. It's certainly not really bright, and in fact it's about the 50th brightest star in the sky. And if you live in areas with a high amount of light pollution, not really that visible at all. Now I would wonder if Dave really knows which star Polaris is.
It's 48 times bigger than the sun. So if I made it 48 times farther, 48 light days away, you couldn't see it, because scientifically its angular size would be too small. And that's not a theory. That's actual math and science and, what our eyes can see. So 48 times farther, let's round up 2 light months away. At 2 light months away, you couldn't see it. Let's round up a light year just to be safe. You couldn't see it. They tell us it's 433 light years away. We see it as bright as the sun, just as a little tiny star. Okay. These are things that they don't teach us how to think about in school. Because if you thought about them, you'd be like, well, I don't know what the stars are, but I know that they're not what they say they are. They're close, they're small, they're within the Earth system here.
You aren't taught to think like that because what you're saying is incorrect. Now a human can actually see a candle flame about 1.6 miles away in the dark without any obstructions. Now a candle flame at that distance would have an angular size of 0.00045 degrees, well below the angular resolution limit of 0.02 degrees for our eye, yet we still see the flame. So I'd be asking Dave here, how is it that we can see a candle flame at that distance despite being it well below the angular resolution limit of our eye? But it's unreasonable for us to expect you to see the light from a star that is a truly massive star that is hundreds of light years away. Now I'm thoroughly enjoying this one actually, so I'm going to pause it here and come back next week to do some more if that's all right with you. So for now we are all done and dusted for another Flat Earth Friday. Thank you so much for watching, it truly is appreciated. If you enjoyed it today, this sort of video, please do like the video and consider subscribing too. Really looking forward to bringing you the next 2 or 3 videos for this little series. Just enough time for me to tell you a little bit more about today's sponsors, Planet Wild. Just enough time to once again thank Planet Wild for sponsoring today's video. Remember to sign up for free. Click the link in the description. We can get on the waiting list and get a first glance of what they're up to. Honestly, it is well worth it. I've been Simon Dan. Have yourselves a great weekend and I'll see you on Tuesday, where we're looking at someone who thinks that the moon is hollow and a spaceship. See you then.